And we're live on Book Chat Live. Woohoo! And welcome to people on LinkedIn for the first time ever. I just had this urge to go live on LinkedIn. So this week we had the amazing Holly Homer, who was just saying, just idly thrown in that she has 3.5 million people following her Facebook page. So
that's my claim to fame. Yeah. That makes me super famous.
Yes. So apart from your Facebook fame, who is Holly Homer and what do you do briefly? Because we've got some books.
So my main thing is I run Kids Activities blog, which is fun things to do with your kids and resources for parents. And then most recently, a co-founder of pagewheel.com, which is an amazing tool if you're trying to build an audience or help grow a small business of any type.
Okay. Well, shall we get straight into the book side of things? So the first book, oh no, this is the wrong people. This is
That's not mine.
That's this is the first book. So yeah, you're not Michael Hyatt's book. You're Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel, Genius Pound Deception on the Eve of World War I by Douglas Brunt. I should have shortened that. So why that book?
So he has a podcast that I had listened to, and then I had heard several interviews of him on, and normally, like, I don't know that I would normally pick up historical, like, because this is a nonfiction book. Yeah. Historical nonfiction. I mean, it's not like I wouldn't, but generally I don't. And I usually like just a lighter read, but the story sounded really interesting and I loved this book. Yeah. So he will take you through basically like the invention of the diesel engine and how that changed history in a crazy way that, like, we don't even give credit to this guy today. Yeah. But back then it was like so cool because they were so, like, all the people that and the players are like all famous people that you've heard of because like there's just a handful of like movers and shakers at that time period and they all knew each other. And so, and the cool thing is he, like, the reason why, like, I feel like we don't know a lot about him today is that he mysteriously disappeared off of a ship. Oh. And like poof. Yeah. And it was on all the front pages on everything across the world, in fact, because everybody knew who he was because he was one of the most famous inventors of the time. And there was all this speculation of, is it suicide? Was it murder? Was there foul play in some way? And he solves the mystery. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I will not tell you what that is because I want you to read the book because it's it would be a fun read. And I think this is why I love this book so much. It'd be a fun read without the mystery, but the mystery is actually, like, by the time you solve the mystery, you're pretty invested.
We have a comment on Amazon that's saying, never heard of that. So I'm not sure if that's that book or LinkedIn or your podcast, but certainly Mysterious Case. And,
it's a mysterious case.
Yeah, I didn't know he disappeared. I mean, we've all heard of Diesel because of the engine, but I didn't know he disappeared. So it sounds really interesting.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was really interesting is the diesel engine is still a really major player in, today. Yeah. But like, we don't really even think about it. And once you learn about why the diesel engine is so different than other engines, you wonder if we're even maximizing it today, which, like, yeah, I'm curious, and I might want to go into engineering later and find out. Somebody needs to figure it out.
I think there might be environmental reasons why the diesel engine doesn't necessarily take off. But
because it can be run without gas.
Oh,
yeah, okay. It's like it could be a like we could be running it without using our resources. It's crazy. That's what's so cool about it.
Okay. Well, on that note, should we on to the next book? Happy Pocket Full of Money, Infinite Wealth and Abundance in the Here and Now by David Cameron Gikandi. Shouldn't have tried to pronounce
that either. Yeah. So this is like the book I probably have recommended the most. I am not a very woo-woo person, and I like when people were talking about the law of attraction and all this metaphysical stuff, and I'm just like kind of rolling my eyes. And this book was so good at kind of tying some science, some theory, and just psychology together so that you really look at the law of attraction in a different way, and a lot less woo-woo and a lot more actionable. And it also has a really nice like mindset of like increasing income, like you're looking at money in a little bit different way. And I just thought it was really well put together. And no matter where you are on the spectrum of what you believe, I think you'll get something out of this, which is really cool.
Okay. Well, that sounds... I mean, we've had quite a few books talked about the law of attraction. I think is there a book called The Law of Attraction?
There is.
Isn't there? But this is a different one.
This is a different one. And it's a little bit, it's just, I don't know. I liked it. It was more actionable, and it was, and it did go into kind of some of the behind the scenes of what people believe about, you actually changing your life through the law of attraction. But it was a lot more science-based. I don't know. It's just it was a lot more accessible to me as a skeptic.
So it appealed to you. Okay, let's go on to the next book. And that's The Out of Sync Child, Recognizing and Coping with Sensory Processing Differences by Carol Kranowitz. I think I've said that right.
Yes. So The Out of Sync Child is a relatively old book. It's probably 20 or 25 years old, and that might even be a second or third printing by that point. But as I was a mom of a young child that was, in my mind at that time, was acting out. Like I thought he was just like a tantrum-prone child, and but like things weren't like, it didn't make sense. He seemed to be overreacting to just common things, and I couldn't find the reason why he was like so angry or so like, just acting out and hitting things and all this kind of stuff, until I read the first 2 pages in this book and just started to cry. Because like, if you have a child that is dealing with sensory integration issues or sensory processing issues, and it looks very different in different kids. So a lot of times you think, oh, it might be ADD, or it might be autism, or it might be something else. A lot of times it's sensory issues that kids are not coping with well and acting out because of it. And the Out of Sync Child will take you through what to look for and then what to do about it. Yeah. And it like literally changed our lives. And it's because you're so powerless when you think the kid is doing it for no reason. But once you figure out the reason, you can, number one, avoid some of those situations when you need to. And then number two, you can help your child develop coping skills so that they're not dealing with that for the rest of their lives.
So is this like, because I mean, you say about ADD and the rest of that, is this just children in general, or is this for neurodiverse children?
Yeah. So just like, I feel like everything is a spectrum these days, like, ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorders. But this is a very modern problem for kids. And in my opinion, I don't know that Carol would probably agree, is that much of the children's childhood used to be outside, running into things, up and down, tumbling here and going in there. And so they were more adapted to their sensory surroundings in that old-timey childhood. And then what we've done with modern kids in many respects is brought them inside. The temperatures are the same, the lighting is the same, all the surfaces are the same, and they don't get the sensory input to learn from early ages like we used to evolutionarily. So like, I think it's a modern problem that we're going to see more and more of it. And then the thing is if you've ever like, if you read this book and you'll see yourself in some of these things. Like there was a grocery store for the longest time I just didn't go to because it made me feel icky. I didn't like the lighting. Like it seemed dark to me. I just said, oh, that grocery store is dark. And everybody else was like, that grocery store's not dark. And then I realized through reading this book that it was a sensory thing that my body had a hard time coping with. So so in adult bodies, we get used to like how to deal with that, or we can avoid it, but kids don't have that. Like they can't avoid situations a lot of times. And then a lot of times they just are overwhelmed. They feel attacked by these sensations.
Yeah, well, I remember as a kid, I hated a lot of road journeys because in those days, in the 80s, like we had the car we had a real petrol smell, and I hate the smell of petrol.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot to be, because you're right, kids don't have that agency that adults have, do they? So
no, and just one more thing about this, like my son's first sentence was cut this tag out. So like he used to strap his like he used Velcro shoes. He'd strap his Velcro shoes on really, really tight. And for the fact I had to like replace them all the time because he was like tearing them. And both those things were like, that was irritating, but also he wanted the extra input around his foot of a sensation. So like, there's just weird stuff that will happen. If you can't explain it, I promise you it's probably sensory.
Okay. Well, I think the next book might have, given that it's the next one in the series, but we'll do due diligence, and I'll play the transition. And it's The Out of Sync Child Has Fun, revised edition. Activities for kids with sensory processing disorder. So presumably this is a follow-on. Is it the same? Is it next book in the series or book after?
So it's the same author, and it's more of a workbook. In the fact that the first book, The Out of Sync Child, goes through kind of like what's happening, the science behind it, kind of like what you'll see and how to cope with it. And then The Out of Sync Child Has Fun shows you all these things that you can do, like all these fun activities that will help them be more integrated and develop sensory skills, that they're able to interpret things a little bit better, not overreact to things, desensitize in some ways, so that it's not such a big deal. In fact, the cool thing about sensory processing disorder, and like when your kid has these sensory issues, is it's not a medication or it's not a complicated treatment. It's really trying to find ways they can play and be active within their environment that will help them overcome some of these things. So like you might go to an occupational therapist if you have a really severe case, but if you have a light case or you're just dealing with a few issues, this book can show you exactly what you can do at home. And it's just, you're just playing. So it's super fun.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get into a rant here, but I think there is a temptation nowadays to medicalize every issue, every problem. And sometimes, because the parents have got the time to spend with the child where the therapist or other person won't have. So anything that the parent can do themselves that might at least help is worth doing.
Well, and this will give you tools. So like if you see your kid acting out in a way, you start recognizing these things, you're instead of like, go sit, be quiet, you're like, hey, let's go play this game. Yeah. And all of a sudden you have things that are fun to do and fun to do together instead of like making a deal out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we get away from kids for a little bit?
I think so. Well, maybe not all the way.
Yeah, well, I think we're coming back to kids, but we're going away at the moment. Maybe not. Yeah. I saw the Calm the Chaos, a fail-proof roadmap for parenting, even the most challenging kids, by Dayna Abraham.
So, and actually, I'm a friend of Dayna's. So like I not only have I read her book, but I have been along for this journey of hers. And so the cool thing is Dayna came up with a way to deal with kids that had medical challenges and medical diagnoses. And one of the things that happens in these communities with when you have a child with medical challenges and like behavioral issues that are pretty ingrained, is that they find techniques that they are able to use within these communities that help their children. But the average parent doesn't know about these things. And as we know, all children have some issues at some point, and some behavioral stuff that like is difficult to deal with as a parent. So what's really cool about this is this gives, no matter if you have, what area of the spectrum of anything, any diagnosis or non-diagnosis, and if you're lucky to have none, you're going to find stuff in here that are super actionable to create calm in the home. Because one of the problems is chaos feeds on chaos, and over time it can just become a mountain of its own. And so if you can kind of stop that and create, and it's not some structure, but like in a very unstructured way, a very easy way, a very calm way to live your life with just like the funny thing about most of the advice in here is it's very simple, actionable things that you're like, why didn't I even think of that? You know what I mean? And so when you can string together a few of those things and then start taking action in your own home, it's freakishly amazing how much better things can get quickly.
Okay. Right. I think now we're going to go to the non-kid book. And, The Glucose Revolution, the life-changing power of balancing your blood sugar by Jessie Inchauspe. I've slandered many a poor author's surname on this show. So why this book?
So I like this book because I'm at the age where you're on a diet of some sort at any given time. Not necessarily to lose massive amounts of weight, but like, hey, 5 pounds here, 10 pounds there, and just so that you can be as active and as healthy as possible. So like I had done the keto and I had done the other stuff, and like it never, and I have a background in science, so it never quite, I'm like, I get why like the keto works and I get why the other things kind of work, but like it never fit into my lifestyle. And I was always like, that's an unsustainable way to live your life unless you're like really into meat, which I'm not. So, and I was like, it's just frustrating because I found like, oh, well, once, 1 month out of every year, like I might have to go do keto so I can maintain my life. But then the rest of the year, I'm slowly inching back up. And like there has to be a solution for that. What I love about the Glucose Revolution is it kind of breaks apart like the fact that you actually can eat carbs, and you can actually eat carbs in a sensible way if you do it in a certain priority. So what basically, if you kind of think about it like as if you're eating a sandwich, if you ate the protein first and then the carbs afterwards, your body metabolizes it different than if you ate the carbs first and then the protein, or if you ate it all at one time. And so it gives you strategies so that you can still maintain a really healthy diet and put carbs back into your diet in a way that you may delay them a little bit in the meal or not eat them by themselves as snacks. But it gives you, and it's all based on like not spiking your blood sugar. So it's really kind of helpful. It's also very actionable, which you can tell I love actionable.
Well, I mean, I am somebody who's tried about every diet ever known to mankind. So
I get that.
I mean, I've heard that like you're supposed to, isn't it supposed to be like fiber first, then protein, then carbohydrates? Right down the end.
And like really. And what I took away from it is like, even if you just eat everything that you normally eat and you just like order it just a little bit different. The other thing, I think this book was one that were like, hey, even walking 10 minutes after a meal will make a really big difference in your blood sugar. So like if you just figure out to do exactly what you're doing right now in just a little bit different order and take a little walk after every meal, it will make a humongous difference in your life.
I mean, it's it's funny how like you end up realizing, oh yeah, people used to have dessert at the end of the meal as the sweet
and
thing.
I miss dessert.
Well, but that's the thing. Like people already knew, like society already knew it, and now we've changed to just,
Right.
oh yeah, let's eat
I know.
stuff all the time.
Well, and I mean, like, and you think back to, like to when they had dessert, generally their meal was very protein heavy
Yeah.
because they didn't have the luxury of having all these carbs sitting
Yeah.
around their house. That you wouldn't have necessarily potatoes all year round, or you wouldn't have a fresh bread unless it was a special occasion. So like our bodies are here for a reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, the potato is an American invention, obviously, isn't it?
That's true.
Well, American import. I don't think they invented it when they went over. But, yeah, it's quite interesting, really. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the kids. Get back to what the kids are doing. 101 kids activities that are the bestest, funnest ever. The entertainment solution for parents, relatives, and babysitters by Holly Homer and Rachel Miller. So this is
full disclosure. I wrote this book. Yeah. But in fact, this is my first book, and it's my favorite book. Ooh. And the reason for it is it has 101 things to do with your kids. But every single one of them has, well, first of all, it has big, beautiful pictures in it too.
Ooh, yeah, just nicely formatted.
Beautiful pictures. But what's special about this book, when you relate it to just any other book that's out there, is first of all, it's something you can hand your kids and they can flip through and find something to do, which is like super helpful. But the other thing is every single one has modifications for older children and modifications for younger children. Because one of the things that I found in my own life was I had 3 boys of different ages that played together. So, a lot of times you'll say, oh, this is for, these activities are for 6-year-olds. Well, if you have a classroom of 6-year-olds, that's super helpful. But if you have a family situation or you have friends over, like families that get together and play together, then like they're usually dealing with a wide variety of ages. And then the other thing that we found is that like a lot of times we would modify things based on like who was playing. So like we have like our family Foursquare a game in here that like even 78-year-old grandma could play with these things, so like it's not just about the kids, it's about like just really having fun together, whatever that looks like for your family.
So how did you was this bitter experience that you end up developing all of these games and activities for children, or did you kind of acquire them do you go around hunting them out to compile the book?
Yeah, so I've been running Kids Activities blog for a really long time. Yeah. And one of the first things we did was kind of talk about traditional play. And you think about, oh, what are the games I played as a child? And then talking to like relatives, what did you play as a child? And like to a certain extent, some of that has been lost into these newer generations, especially when you think about kids being on devices and that kind of stuff. And so like one of the things, like I kind of wanted a library of like just ideas that are kind of timeless, whether it might be a game that like 5 generations have played or something that we kind of modified in the last generation that was just kind of fun.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you about your co-author, Rachel. How was she involved? Was she like the...
So Rachel and I have been friends for 18 years, in fact, 15 years. And she was the one that actually started Kids Activities blog. Oh, and I purchased it from her about 14 years ago. And it was called Quirky Mama at that time. And I rebranded it to Kids Activities blog and kept it going while she went and did other fun things. But we wrote several books together in the process.
Okay. I think we might be talking about one of them in a second. So here we go. The 101 coolest simple science experiments. Awesome things to do with your parents, babysitters, and other adults by Holly Homer, Rachel Miller, and Jamie Harrington. So you got yet another author. So
we added to it. Yeah. So I have a science background, and so do several of the other authors. And we also were really involved in like homeschooling children and stuff like that. So one of the things that I love about this book is it has a glow in the dark cover, but that we are doing things that are really easy to do at home. Generally using ingredients and things that you have at home. Also, like where you don't feel like you have to know all the science behind this. We're going to give you a little bit of the science just so that you can have a conversation. But most of the things that we're talking about is less about the education, more about the experience of just piquing your child's curiosity through science. And then like we also have one of my favorite things on every activity is our mess meter. Because as a mom of 3 boys, some days you're prepared to be messy and sometimes you're not. So here again, like all these big just really simple things that you can do with your kids that get them thinking about, being curious about the world around them, hands-on things that they can do and be really like awed by, and not worry so much about trying to like shove education in any other way than just being observant and talking about it with your kids.
So I mean, I did science up to A level. I did computer science at university and economics, which aren't really sciences. So. There will be some questions that I imagine parents and other people would have. Like, are these going to be like, is there an educational element to them, or are they just like interesting reactions of chemicals? And the other one is like, are they likely to blow themselves up with it?
No, there's really only 1 or 2 that are explosive, and there's instructions about how to deal with children around that. And then each one is going to have some background about the science in a very simple way that you could just read it. But I truly believe childhood should be more about like experience and fun. And I think kids learn more through observation than any other way. And I think we're removing that from their lives to a certain extent and always in lecture mode. And I think it's a lot more powerful to do something playful with your child and then have them have a question about it that maybe then you go read the paragraph about the science to them. Because it was like they were interested. You're not like, hey, we're going to go do this and learn about X, Y, and Z. So I love to flip that on the head and let that be a child-led experience. And, it doesn't, like their lives are long. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to pack all the information in today, but it might be a week or 2 later that they might say, like I was thinking about that thing we did the other day, like, can we do it again? Or something like that. Like kids process things at a much different rate than I think we think they do in a textbook.
Yeah. Well, obviously now, showing my age again, but now we've got things like Google and AI, and like you've got this little co-pilot thing sitting in the corner of my thing that you could ask, like, so if I add this to this, what happens? And it will actually, which is quite different from the old days of books, I guess.
And I really encourage you, like with your kids, to get them hands-on with stuff. It's so easy to put them in front of a device or put them in front of a YouTube video that might explain it. But if they get in the middle of it and see how something works for themselves, it's a very different process in their brain than if they're just watching.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I'll do this anyway. So I have 2 questions I ask most guests. Well, there's one question I ask authors, and there's one question I ask everybody. So I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody. If you had to explain to me in a little flow chart, or you can just say one book actually, but if you pick one of these books to give to somebody, if you were like deciding to give a person one of these books, what would be your logic to working out which book to give them?
So, like, that's a really good question.
Well, thank you.
It probably would depend on like how I knew them, and I think that's one of the reasons why like my book list is so diverse. And and I think everybody's is. I don't think I'm special in that way. But like, if it was somebody that from that parenting space, like, something that would be kind of what I would think be helpful resource Whereas if it was like a friend, like I might like hand them like a really good novel that I had just read, you know, like a quick read type thing. But I think like in general, like I literally said about the Pocket Full of Happiness, like that, I probably, I mean, I probably sold, I should be handing out affiliate links on Amazon. I've probably sold more of those than probably any book on earth.
Yeah. So that's your default book is
yeah, I think so. I mean, it's an easy, and then I would say the other one that we didn't talk about today was like how to win friends and influence people.
Oh, okay.
I think that's like I think everybody in the entire world should like, I think if everybody had read that, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, I think it's been recommended 3 or 4 times on this show.
Yeah.
The 4 Agreements, I think, is the book that's been most recommended, actually.
Say that again?
The 4 Agreements is the book
Okay,
that's been most recommended. I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote it, but it's very short. It's a short book.
I love that.
The other question that I ask is, obviously, because you're an author, have you got any books coming up that you're planning to write or co-write? Have you got yet another author involved in the next one?
No. So all of my books to date have been like 101 or more. My latest one was 500. Those are very long. Don't do that. If I can just give advice to other people, don't do it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is like they're picture books. Yeah. And so when I write another book, it's going to not have pictures, and it's not going to be 100 or 500 of anything.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be a story, and I think that's really. I think like I'm really excited about that after doing like doing really, really long books.
So, what's the story going to be about? Can you give a hint for people? So
I don't know. Like, I think it's going to be fiction, but like, you know, I've been playing around with writing a little bit, and like, you know, I've been blogging for 20 years, so I've been writing about myself and like how to do things for a really long time, and so to step out of that and to write about something like that's in my brain and not necessarily in reality, like that is not the easiest jump, and so. Like, I have no idea what that looks like down the road. It's not coming out in the next year or 2.
Well, you don't know. It might be like, oh yeah, it's like write it after the show. And like, we'll expect you back next week and you've written your book. So, well, thank you so much for being a guest this evening. And
thank you.
I always like, what button do I press? I think I press this button up. Oh yeah, I've worked out the order on pressing the buttons. So thanks for everybody who's watching on all the platforms. There were a few people watching, which is always unusual. And may or may not have a show next week. I need to get a guest in. So it may be season 8 starts rather than what we've got at the moment. So,
I feel like you have the flexibility to do that.
Well, I changed it to having season and episodes because I travel quite a lot, and it's kind of like. But then I don't tell people that it's like, oh yeah, this is the end of the season. This might be the end of the season. Probably not. I think I'll be like, but it might be 2 weeks until the next guest. So anyway, thanks for everybody watching.